Many thanks for still staying with us on the show. This time around, we want to take a look at the Nigerian economy. The CBN governor and the finance minister were at the United States, the IMF to be precise, to, talk about what they've been doing so far with the Nigerian economy. And we just want to unpack some of the things that they mentioned. So we'll look at talking points. First, which is efforts to stabilize the Naira. Secondly, economic hardship despite Naira gains, and more to do about fresh $2.2 billion World Bank loan. And joining us is just the right person for the job, Dr. Samson G. Simon, economic analyst. Well, a lot has been happening in the Nigerian economy when you look at some of the policies of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You talk about the unification of the exchange rate, removal of fuel subsidy, and of course they talked about the CNG, vehicles that will be unleashed in May, according to the spokesperson of the president, Onanuga. But away from that, let's just examine some of the highlights from the meeting with the IMF. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, said that the Apex Bank is assiduously, trying to achieve a stable foreign exchange rate. Yemi Kadoso, the CBN governor, stated this during a press conference held at the annual meetings of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank Group. Kadoso said the financial regulator is also working to ensure that exchange rate finds its adequate price discovery level. The CBN governor said the local currency will continue to appreciate against foreign currencies. Well, last week he was interviewed and he, made some comments on some of the things that he has come up with to ensure that the Naira, is working. Let's take a listen to just a few minutes of what he said in that interview. We'll be right back to talk some more.
And then, of course, the next thing in terms of sequencing was to make it abundantly clear that the era of interventions, which really hadn't taken us anywhere, were over. And that I intended to go back to orthodox monetary policy. So I think those were very, very important things to make very clear. And I think that helped, obviously, to set the stage for what came after. It was very important to continue to re-emphasize those things in the process of building trust. Of course, communication was also very key. And it has to also be sequenced. And I know that at the outset, there was concern that one was not saying enough. But there was a strategy to that, because I felt it was important to, at the outset, come out and say things you needed to say when you needed to say them. And I recall that at a particular forum, which was the Chartered Institute of Bankers, which is held on a yearly basis, I used that opportunity to communicate very strongly. And normally, that is a forum that perhaps, the governors talk for maybe 15 minutes, half an hour, and I took over an hour. Okay, but I made sure I got everything, including giving forward guidance with respect to the banking sector and to let people know that we were going to have a recapitalization exercise. This was in November, and the guidelines didn't come out till just recently. So they had plenty of time to start thinking that through. So these are some of the sequences that we went through. In terms of what kept me, some of the issues that one was concerned about and how did I approach them and all that, there was a lot of worry with respect to the excess money supply, and one had to take bold measures with respect to mopping up liquidity, and then subsequently, of course, hiking interest rates. And I know that the first monetary policy committee meeting we had, I did a 400 basis point increase, which was unprecedented. But we had to do it. We had to do it. We had no choice.
All right, now away from Kadoso, the CBN governor, the Minister of Finance, Wale Adunu, also disclosed that the federal government is set to receive around $2.2 billion single-digit interest loan from the World Bank and another budget support facility from the African Development Bank. And he was speaking on the sources of international funding to the Nigerian economy. Edun listed diaspora remittances, foreign portfolio investments, and facilities from the World Bank and other international development partners. And Edo also tapped issuing dollar-dominated securities specifically targeted at Nigerians in the diaspora and those with foreign-denominated savings in Nigeria as another measure to attract forex inflows into the country. He further highlighted the efforts of the fiscal side of the economy in complementing the recent monetary policies reforms by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So you can see the Minister of Finance and, of course, the CBN governor working together to get the economy on board. Well, according to the minister, the issuing of government securities at an interest rate closer to the CBN's monetary policy rate is an indication of collaboration between both sides of the economy in tackling inflation in the country and attracting forex inflows. Well, joining us now on politics to discuss the economy on the Tinubu administration is Dr. Samson G. Simon, economic analyst. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Nice to be here.
Pleasure is also mine. Well, our government has made efforts to stabilize the Naira. Last week, prior to the last week, we've been saying, the Naira makes some considerable gains. People have been excited. I recall the last time I spoke on the economy on the show, I was concerned for the reality for Nigerians, given the fact that I was saying Naira dropped significantly. It was close to 2,000 and it's now close to 1,000 Naira. Okay, so quite a decrease. But last week, we saw the dollar rise a bit, which made the governor to say, okay, we're going to see some ups and downs from time to time. But the question that we asked initially when the Naira started dropping was, is this sustainable? So, Doctor, I'm asking you the same question right now. Do you think this is sustainable?
Well, it has been a roller coaster ride. The Naira almost went under. When the new president came on board in May 2023, the official exchange rate was around 460 to the dollar. And that exchange rate has depreciated to as low as 1,007 on the official exchange rate, on the official exchange market. On the parallel exchange market, it even went as low as 1,009 before it started appreciating. Nigerians have been jubilating that the Naira has actually appreciated. It has actually is recovering lost ground. However, while the central bank has done a lot of things, we have had flurry of circulars and policies, all in a bid to stem the tide. I don't think what we're doing now is really sustainable. I think what we're doing at best is buying time. Because if you look at it, they have reduced demand on the dollar through policies like the stopping of dollar-denominated collaterals for Naira loans. And they have increased the supply because our interest rates have been hiked by 600 basis points within the span of a month. So thereby attracting foreign portfolio investments. And they have been borrowing money too to ensure that the paucity of FX in the foreign exchange market has ended. But what we need should be fundamental changes within the economy, structural changes. I know those things cannot happen overnight, but in the meantime, what we can do as a matter of urgency is to encourage foreign direct investment. While attracting foreign portfolio investment is good, we need to attract foreign direct investment and other forms of investment. We need to spur our exports. And for a while now, the crude oil and gas have been the mainstay of the FX market. And because of oil theft, that from these sources have basically to almost nothing. So there's a need to talk to the advisor, the president, and other people of the economic policy need to do something with the central bank to go and tackle insecurity in the oil industry. Then, all exports. And one of the biggest problems we have in Nigeria is inability to export. They almost contribute 50%. The export is 10% of that. Compared to China, where NMSM contributes 6 their weight in contributing almost 70% to export. They need to support export from NMMM.
All right, Doctor, we've been having issues with your audio. I mean, probably your ear devices, disconnecting with us. But anyways, if you can hear us clearly, should Nigerians be concerned over the Nigerian foreign exchange reserve, which has dipped by about $2.16 billion due to its use to aid the Naira appreciation? I know this last week was, of major concern to economy watchers and who's been monitoring, the foreign exchange market with regards to the Naira and the dollar. But what's your concern regarding this?
Well, when the foreign exchange reserves are dwindling, that calls for concern. The expectation is that as much as possible, the monetary authorities should not be intervening in the FX market unless it's absolutely necessary, and that should only be occasionally done. The central bank governor is on record as saying that the reduction in the FX reserves was not as a result of defending the Naira. According to him, was that there were some obligations that the central bank had to meet up with, and that was why the foreign exchange reserves went down by more than $2 billion. So we give him the benefit of the doubt, even though some of us are very skeptical with that, but we don't have any evidence to prove the contrary. So for now, we accept that is because they paid up some loans. And mind you, our FX reserves have a lot of encumbrances on them to the tune of almost everything. Everything has been mortgaged, everything has been collateralized in the foreign exchange reserves. So one should not be absolutely surprised if the central bank governor says that the FX reserves went down because they were trying to meet up with some obligations. I think it's a reasonable explanation, even though we may not absolutely agree with what he's saying, but it's a very reasonable explanation because you use FX, amongst other things, to pay up loans that a particular sovereign is owing.
Okay, Doctor, let's talk about the $2.2 billion loan with one interest rate. That could be exciting for, most people when they hear 1% rate. So what do you make of the announcement from the Minister of Finance regarding this loan?
Well, this is done all in a bid to spur the supply of FX. There has been illiquidity in the FX market in Nigeria for a while. And both the monetary authorities as well as the fiscal authorities have been doing everything possible to attract FX. And, fiscal policy, one aspect of it is about debts. And that's why the Minister of Finance made mention of the loan of $2.25 billion from the World Bank. almost at zero interest because it's just 1%. And to be paid back in 30 years with 10 years moratorium. So there's nothing that is as good as that. So I believe that the money can be used for a lot of things. And one of it is to meet up with obligations. The government has a lot of obligations to meet up with. And this loan will be used to meet up with such obligations. And it's going to help with the liquidity of the foreign exchange market. So that's a good thing about it. But all these things are going to accumulate, make our national debt to balloon. So we have to be conscious of that. As cheap as the loan is, because the interest is next to nothing, that does not mean that we may not be creating problems for ourselves down the line. So everything must be done to ensure that we should not just borrow unless it's absolutely necessary. And when we borrow, we should make sure that we use those loans to do the things that can really pay up those loans, pay up the principals as well, as the interest.
Doctor, I do appreciate the fact that, they are trying their best, talking about the collaboration between the finance minister and the CBN governor to ensure that we don't just borrow money anyhow. And given the fact that the interest rate is at 1%, but of course, like you mentioned, it's just going to add to the debt. But in this case, is this necessary? Do you think it's needful that we obtain this loan, even as juicy as the offer stands, given interest rate at 1%?
It's necessary in some aspects, in the sense that we're trying to spur liquidity within the FX market, because if we don't attract as much liquidity as possible, the Naira will go under. Another thing is we need a lot of funds too for infrastructure. We have huge infrastructural deficit, and everything should be done to make sure that this infrastructure is the problem of infrastructure is being tackled. But saying we are borrowing money for one reason and actually using the money for the reason for which we have mentioned might not be the same. So we have to make sure that we don't just borrow randomly. We should make sure that any borrowings that we're embarking upon should be strictly be used for the purpose for which we have taken out such loan.
All right. Now, my question, Doctor, is when this loan is used up, what happens next? Are we going to find ourselves borrowing again? And that brings me to the question of internally generated revenue, which is needful. We've got agriculture. We need to move away from crude oil. What is your assessment of government looking, at internally generated revenue to help, shore up, all the needful monies and revenue that is needed for us as a nation?
I think the tax man is on that. The Minister of Finance said they want to increase our tax revenue to GDP ratio to as high as 18%. I know it's easier said than done, but at least they have a goal and they're working towards it. They want to reduce the number of taxes. That's why they set up that Taiwo Oyedele's committee. And I think they are doing everything humanly possible to raise as much revenue as they can, because that's very necessary. But no matter how much revenue the government can accrue, that does not stop us from borrowing. Some of the countries that have the biggest revenues still borrow money from whether multilateral agencies like the World Bank or even bilaterally from other countries. So it will not stop us from borrowing, but maybe the extent at which you borrow will be reduced. It will only become when it's only necessary that we borrow. So they are doing everything possible. And even for the oil production, I know oil production has been below par. We have not been meeting up with the OPEC quota. They have made it clear that they want to make sure that this output in oil, crude oil in Nigeria, has actually reached the OPEC levels. So I think they are doing a lot, or at least they have been promising us and they have been stating their intentions. They have been giving us forward guidance on how they intend to embark on a lot of things. And for now, I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt. We may not be seeing the results, but we should give them the benefit of the doubt. And let's see how things pan out.
Okay. Talking about giving plus to the government, the Naira is said to be the best performing currency in the world. But most people don't understand the economics of how Naira gains translate to better living conditions. What's your take on this, thought that is just going round about in the country? Because Nigerians are curious to see how the gains from Naira translates into better living conditions. What has been your assessment so far?
Saying is they don't deserve any praise for the recovery of the Naira. Why do I say so? If somebody is like a child that has inherited his father's house, and then he destroyed that house, the entire house, to a rubble. So because he has built one side of the wall, then people will say that he deserves praise. I feel that doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up. It's their own mess. They have to clean up their own mess. For the central bank governor, I understand because he inherited the mess. But for this government, they actually caused this mess. So they don't deserve any praise for it. And secondly, people are not actually seeing the impact of the recovery of the Naira so far. The impact is next to nothing. And the impact that people are looking forward to is that prices will come down. Inflation is still climbing, though at a decelerating rate, but it's still climbing. And I know some items have actually come down in price. But because some of these people, businesses, they have backlog. They have to clear this backlog before they can buy with the new price. And that's when the prices will come down. You know, somebody said the moment Naira depreciated, prices went up. Yes, because businesses are trying to take advantage of the depreciation of the Naira. Maybe they bought an input at 1,000 Naira when the dollar was 1,000 when the Naira was 1,000 to the dollar. Now that the Naira has depreciated to 1,009, that's almost twice. They want to take advantage. They'll quickly increase prices. But let's say from 1,900, that was an increase of 40 prices by 40-something%. When the Naira was exchanged, right? And then when I still appreciated to almost 2,000 Naira, I would just see that as an opportunity to appreciate the value. If the reverse happens, I'm not going to crash my prices because I'm going to make so much loss. So nobody wants to make a loss. So we have to wait for some few months and see how the impact of the appreciation is going to make the lives and the livelihoods of Nigerians better. Because prices are downward sticky, and it's not only in Nigeria, all over the world, prices are downward sticky. And also there is a lag between when something happens to when you actually see the impact. So that's why we're not seeing everything immediately. But we can see some few impacts. Like rice now has reduced in price. Even noodles has reduced in price. So some items are actually coming down that we can obviously see the impact of the appreciation of the Naira. But for general price level to fall, it may take a few months for that. Patience.
Okay, well, we had a few interruptions there with your audio, but all the same, Doctor, thank you so much, for making us understand what's going on in the country. And of course, like I was complaining earlier with other guests I had on the show to talk about the economy, like, okay, the Naira is dropping, but we're not seeing significant decrease. But just like you said, we've seen some commodities, just some, not all, we've seen prices go down, but like analysts have said, it's beyond just dollar Naira, okay? When you look at the cost of fuel, that could also play a factor also. But we've got to let you go, Doctor. Thank you so much for being with us on Politics Now.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Doctor, that will be it for now. Thank you so much for being with us on the show. We can only hope that we continue to see this trend, where the dollar continues to go down. And I'm optimistic. Who says the dollar cannot, rates with the Naira cannot get up to 500 Naira to $1? It's possible, but can President Bola Tinubu deliver? That's the big question. Bear in mind that next month, on the 31st of May, it'll mark 1 year since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came into power. So right now there is lots of pressure on the president to deliver. But the big question is, can he make a huge difference in just 1 month? Because once it's up to 1 year since the president has been in power, people are not going to take it lightly, in terms of their criticism of his administration so far. Well, we must call it off right now, and that's the much I can take on the show today. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Mono Balago. We'll see you next time on Politics Now.